All that work just for that tiny little ding. Same thing on this side. Is everybody having a good day? Yeah, it's a beautiful day outside, so can't complain. How many people is this their first time seeing blacksmithing?
My first time.
Yeah? So welcome to the world of blacksmithing. It's interesting, there's basically multiple sides to blacksmithing. Most people think of blacksmiths doing a lot of really hard, heavy work, and that is a huge portion of our job. But there's also the light, gentle work like what I'm doing today. So sometimes you see blacksmiths pounding away with sledgehammers on metal so that we can move large chunks of metal to make like anchors or huge chains or possibly even plows. And other times we're doing light detail work like I'm doing here. On the fire, at the other side.
Let's see. Here.
This is a blower. Yeah, it's an invention from the 1850s. It blows oxygen up underneath the fire. It was supposed to replace the bellows, but most blacksmiths still preferred the bellows. To be honest, it was around for thousands of years. This thing only came around really in the last like 75 years, 100 years that blacksmiths were working.
Why do they prefer the bellows?
Because it was two reasons. Number one, it was just the older way of doing things. It was the traditional way, and we know how stubborn humanity is, especially men. And second off, you pump like this usually, and it's usually very light. I can actually pump a bellows with a pinky, and I've done that many times. It's very gentle, pretty easy. You can stand over here with your dominant hand, and with the blower, you have to hand crank it. It's usually the same as this angle, which doesn't feel as natural. Yeah. It's personal taste though. I've seen some old shops that have had blowers, and I've worked on both, and I definitely tend to prefer the bellows. There's another reason. It doesn't quite work as effectively as the blower does. So it's easier to give yourself a break, whereas without actually giving yourself a break. Whereas the blower, you can very easily work yourself into exhaustion or into the point of passing out. Like I'm not, because I've paced myself pretty well, but you could quite easily keep pumping this and get to a point where you're doing so much work so quickly that you could keel over on the anvil. And I have seen that happen with people who are using propane forges, who have had more experience on like gas forges, on coal forges, because they're not used to the metal being ready as quickly. So you actually have to really pace yourself and say, you know what, it's time for a break. I need my drink break. So as technology changes in this job, you as the worker actually have to say, you know what, let me take a second. This can wait for a minute and go on, because the heating method used to be really slow. And it used to be like, oh, okay, it'll heat up, and while it heats up,
I'll have a drink. Time to some beer.
Yeah. Another interesting fun fact. So farmers worked outside in the sun all day long. You can imagine what type of fun that was, right? And in the 1800s, they actually invented a drink. They didn't really understand what it was. It didn't taste particularly good. But they did know that if you made this, it would end up actually allowing you to work better, making you feel better at the end of the day of working a really long day. And I forgot all of the ingredients that are in there, but essentially, it is actually almost the same ingredients as today's Gatorade.
Oh my goodness.
So all the electrolytes and everything are getting filled in. So basically we invented Gatorade in the 1800s.
Oh wow.
And they were using it, and farmers actually had a cool water bottle. Like today you clip your water bottle on your hip. They actually had a clay ring that you would fill up, and there was a nozzle at the top that you put a cork in. And that clay ring miraculously fit nicely around your arm and underneath your armpit, so that while you were cutting down the stalks or harvesting whatever you needed, or even using a pitchfork, it stayed up on your shoulder.
Oh wow.
And when you were thirsty, you'd take it down and have a drink. So you didn't have to try to lug like a bottle with you. They basically invented
That's pretty cool.
an early water bottle. A lot of people look at the past. What? Oh, the Switchel. Thank you, Tim. It's called the Switchel. And a lot of people think, oh, the 1800s, it's so long ago, everything was so different. It really wasn't. If you accept the fact, right, if you accept the fact that you didn't have really indoor plumbing, and your bathroom was usually outside, your quality of living in life, like things that you have, there was some similarity of it back then. So if you wanted toast, we did have a toaster. You put it, basically it held metal on both sides, and you heat it up and then put it down and put the toast bread in there, or toast up your bread. So there was things, there was waffle irons. Your tools are almost identical to what we have today. It's just they were usually made out of iron or steel or another handmade material. It's just you valued everything more because it took more time and thus cost more money to have. Now hopefully I haven't talked too much here. I have a habit of doing that. Perfect.
What are you making?
This is a cheese slicer. There we go. Oh, is it raining now?
Yeah.
So one year I poured here, and the museum had given me something to do, and I stayed out here working in the pouring rain. So actually, the metal is so hot, the anvil's so hot that
It didn't matter, right?
it doesn't matter. It was pouring too, and I was still able to work because
God.
everything's such a hard, hot job.
Did you make knives as well, or is that someone else?
Basic cutlery, we could do a little. There's definitely started mass producing them by the 1800s. So if you could have somebody else do them, you usually would. I'm gonna heat this up and clean it. But we did make knives, and I've done a few of them. What you want is more detailed knives, like stronger knives. You would go to knife makers, and really most of the 17 and 1800s there were enough companies out there. But if you were in a pinch and you needed a basic knife, a blacksmith could do it. It's not a hard job, it just does take a while, and you would be paying a decent amount of money for it, because there's a lot of technical aspects to it. A lot of these things, you just heat them up, you hammer them, they're done. You let them cool and you're happy. Knives, you have to temper them, you have to file them, you have to get everything shaped. The part that confuses people the most is we work with iron and steel. So you would get what's called a blade blank, and it would be finished, but you would have to put the handle and everything on yourself. You'd have to make the handle, everything along those lines. We didn't assemble them for you. Knife makers would. They actually had people which were normally referred to as hilt smiths, which is actually a lie. They didn't use smithing, which is hammering, at all. But they took it anyway. But they would work on the hilt or the back handle. And okay, so I'm going to end up getting this to about red hot. It's just sitting on top of the fire. And we're going to brush off any of the hot rust, and we'll let it cool. The last step is technically two things. One, I would need to brush this with some vegetable oil to blacken it when it's at about 400 degrees. And two, I would want to put a piece of wire between the two ends at the top and tie that really tight, and the wire is actually what cuts the cheese. So I didn't bring any wire with me. I don't think. I'm going to check in my toolbox back here. Pretty sure I don't have any wire. But that would be the only other thing. So I'll do that when I get home. But you get the idea. This is the fun part anyway. A little hotter.
Can I ask for a home tip?
What?
A home tip. How do you condition a cast iron pot or?
So cast iron is poured.
Poured, okay.
You liquefy the metal, and actually the reason that blacksmithing's not done that way is because iron and steel are brittle when you cast them. So it's a totally different job, and it'll actually liquefy the metal. You pour it in the mold, and then if you hit it with something, it would break. So it doesn't work as well for most things. So there's hot rust that forms on this. We got rid of it. There we go. One cheese cutter. No, it's cold. You can touch it. I had one person once who was so afraid to touch the metal that I actually handed it to him. It looked like they grabbed it and they dropped it instantly as soon as I let go. To make matters funny, it was an adult. But yeah, I need my hands to work, so I'll never touch it if it's hot. Or at least I try my best.